Heroes and villains. We love them in our movies. Almost every good story or action film has a hero and a villain. And we have archetypes for these. Character traits that we expect of our hero and we expect of our villain. But what happens in real life when you find that the person you're working for fits the archetype of a villain more than they do that of the hero? Writers use archetypes to describe a villain versus a hero. And for the archetype of a villain, character traits that we're used to seeing are like self-centeredness, they're manipulative, self-serving, quick to sacrifice others for their own gain. They're pretentious, have maybe a God complex. They're all about them. We see characters in children's stories like Captain Hook or Cruella de Vil. Again, they all seem to fit this stereotype. There have been a lot of studies and books that have really talked about what happens when we see this type of leadership. When we see a supervisor or manager or a lead person in an authority role that fits that villain archetype, typically what you find is disengagement with the workforce and low morale, which makes sense. Again, if we're not protected, which is one of the main components that we look for in our leadership, then we got to protect ourselves. It becomes kind of a dog-eat-dog world. And when we know we're not being looked after by upper management, we have to take care of ourselves. There's no circle of safety, there's no protection. About 12,000 years ago, there was something that took place called the Neolithic Revolution, where basically agriculture was developed and people were able to feed more than just themselves, and we were able to survive as a civilization. We created tribes and villages and groups, and we learned that we could do better by protecting one another. While I was asleep, someone would be awake standing guard, and while they slept, I would stand guard. We were always stronger as a group. That hasn't changed. We are better as a group. Some of the classes that I've taught for lean manufacturing and such were how to do problem solving as a team. And there were different activities that I would put people through where they would try and do the activity on their own and then they do it as a group. The group always outperformed the individual. If we can harness the collective energy and intelligence of any group, we will do much better than by ourselves. A good leader will create an environment where they don't have to come up with the great ideas. They want the environment where the great ideas will come from the group that they're managing, they're working with. So that hero, what traits do we look for in our hero? We want the opposite of that we see in the villain. We want to see someone that's caring and compassionate, who builds trust and is protecting. The Gallup organization actually interviewed millions of workers, asking them what they saw, what they look for in leadership. What are those character traits that you most want in a boss or a leader? And they heard things like trust, compassion, stability, hope. Hope is that giving that sense of a hopeful future, where they're creating a good goal, a good future state that people could get excited about, that everyone was going to benefit from. That's what we need in our leadership. Someone that protects and excites and pulls people forward. As children, we all learn the golden rule, which is treat others as you'd like to be treated yourself. When that is there and we take care of the group, amazing things happen. When our boss or managers go for self-serving and that hero or that villain perspective, then all that goes away. Again, the village or tribe is kind of broken. When I see self-serving bosses like that, I always kind of picture in my head a cartoon of a man standing high in a tree sawing a branch, and he's standing on the very branch he's sawing. When self-serving bosses act that way, immature, not taking care of the group, putting their own needs before anyone else's, it's damaging the organization. It's hindering the very people that are your greatest asset. There's a movie that I always liked called, The 300, where it talks about the brave 300 Spartans that took on the Persian army. Those 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae under King Leonidas knew they were going to die. They were greatly outnumbered. Again, historians kind of differ on their opinion of how many Persians were invaded, somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000. But the Spartans held them off for several days before dying. In that movie, The 300, that talks about this battle, you see King Xerxes talking to King Leonidas. King Xerxes was the head of the Persian army, and he makes a statement to King Leonidas that, I crave victory so much, there's not one of my men that I wouldn't sacrifice for that victory. And King Leonidas goes, and there's not one of my men that I would not die for. That's the difference between a hero and a villain. Who do you work for? What kind of person do you try to be? Maybe we need to encourage those hero traits and do our best to, get away from those villain traits. I think in reality, we all probably display a little bit of both. It's when it's in that leadership role that where they have the authority and those immature personality and characteristic traits that so much damage can be done. So hopefully you're working for a hero and not a villain. And we need, like I said, to encourage those traits within us.